Hey crew, Arturo Spraycasso here. This is going to be the digital painting that we'll be creating today. I hope you guys enjoy it. It is called Dawn's Whisper. Alright, so as you guys can see, I am using Photoshop and a tablet. Now, I've debated about making these videos only because they take, to make this painting, first of all, it took over a month. Easy. And as you can see here, I'm manipulating the layers in the background, trying to get the right colors for the sky here. But making these kind of videos, it would take several hours, guys. Like seriously, if I was to combine all the hours that I put the month long into this video, oh, the video would be easily over maybe 4 hours long, I think. So I kind of skipped a lot of that portion and went straight to the finishing touches. And even then, it was about 6 hours long, and I was able to condense it here through manipulating the speed of the video into 20 minutes. So yeah, actually, guys, I am this fast. I wish. Here I'm just using a brush to create the effect of highlights on the trees. So obviously we have our light source, big sun there in the middle of the painting. And so now I'm just going through and adding some of these highlights, making sure that, I don't want these trees, obviously they're hidden, they're not quite in front of us, so they have to be a little bit darker than the other trees. I'm just going up and down here, kind of creating some of these highlights. And then I'll get to a pretty good point where I can tune out the highlights so they're not as bright. That's one of the beauties about Photoshop. You see the opacity there I'm messing with. That'll definitely do that. So one of the things that I get asked a lot, especially since I've been doing this paintings, like, oh, do you do the same transitional or the same motivational that you used to do with your regular spray paintings? Yeah, that's the goal. I mean, I still have the Spraycasso mindset, so I don't really have a concept as to what exactly it is that I'm going to paint. I just start painting. So, that was one of the other questions that I would get a lot in spray painting. Do you know what you're going to paint? Not really, guys. I mean, obviously, I can paint anything, but landscapes is my main niche, right? That's what I'm kind of known for, and that's what I enjoy. And I think it's mostly because when I do these landscapes, I visualize myself there. So I kind of, just start painting what I feel I would like to see, and then it kind of takes a life on its own. Here what I'm doing is I'm just adding some highlights, some brighter colors of the colors that I already have. So, I have some reds, so I obviously went and added some light reds on top of that, some light oranges, even some yellows. This is the same color scheme that I used on the trees as well. It's gonna go throughout the painting here. Sometimes it helps if you visualize light beams coming from the sun, hitting certain spots. Alright, so I'm just selecting the darker shades of the red. I'm gonna go through here. I'm selecting different brushes. I'm not sure why. It's a flip of a coin. Sometimes it shows it, sometimes it doesn't. I think my computer's about to kick the bucket here, so if you guys can't see, I can't see it either, but I was selecting brushes. I was going through, and I have a folder that has a lot of different brushes for landscapes. So it'll be like bushes and certain types of plants, and I just kind of skim through and find the one that I want, change the scale, and then as you can see, this is how I start adding some of the grassy terrain throughout this painting. Again, this is a lot of layer manipulation too. So I don't just start adding the colors on top of the finished background. I create a layer, start manipulating the layers there, the colors and the vibrancy of different shades. Then if I like it and it looks good, then I flatten it, make it into one single image. But for the most part, I won't do this until I know I am completely satisfied with the project or with the look. I'm also adding some highlights throughout these rocks. So, I mean, you can't just add highlights on the plant life and ignore the rocks. You'll have to add highlights through everything. You guys saw me doing the trees earlier. I'll go through and I'll add some highlights on the water later. Once again, I am selecting different brushes, checking throughout several of the layers. See, what I'm doing there is going back and forth. I'm trying to see if this would be a good look for this tree, you know, the brush that I selected. Now, I know you keep seeing the bright greens and then it goes back to dim. So what I'm doing there is I'm adding my highlights, but obviously they're too bright, right? So then I dim them down. I make them a little bit not so in your face. I kind of dim them down. So that's another of the beauties of digital work. You know, when you're, and I still very much enjoy my spray paintings. I haven't done them in a while, but you know, guys, once you're an artist, you can definitely enjoy jumping from media to media. Oh, here I'm just adding some more, and you'll see me doing this throughout the painting, where I'll experiment with the way things look, and then I'll remove it. That's something that you can't really do with some of the known medias, right? Once you put something down, you're kind of screwed. You have to deal with it or try and fix it. So that's another perk, another plus that I love doing this with these paintings, is that I can say, you know what, let me try these clouds. Oh, nope, I don't like it. All right, just remove the layer and we'll try again later. Here what I'm doing is I have a pressure sensitive pen, and so it's supposed to go from really light to really thick, you know, depending on how much pressure you're adding. And I couldn't get the dang thing to work, so it kept coming up really thick. And you know, obviously I like to do the pressure sensitive because I need to add plant life. I need to add some of these grass strands that I'm so known for throughout the landscape, and it just wasn't working. I eventually figured it out. It was a setting. You know, that's one of the downfalls too. If you don't know all the settings, you're kind of stuck. Fortunately, there's a lot of videos out there that'll explain some of these things in Photoshop, and if you have a question, you can always look it up on YouTube. Here I'm adding some highlights on the water and kind of going through it, merging some layers together. Oh, and now I'm adding sparkles. So I do have a brush set for sparkles. It'll make the, see, there I go again, trying to figure out why my pressure sensitive pen is not working. It's just really thick. So then I kind of stop and then go back and start adding some highlights. See, I'm adding some water ripples on the shore of on the shoreline, just to kind of differentiate where the water and the shore meet. Here I selected another brush, and it looks like grass strands of a sort. I don't know, guys. I'm not an expert in plant life. As much as I draw the plant life, you would think, right? I make it all up. I think I've told you guys this before. My dad is actually a tree expert, especially if it gives any kind of fruit. And so when I'm drawing something, he'll say like, I've never seen that tree before. So don't hold me to that, guys. I just make up my own trees. Here I'm experimenting with the clouds, kind of going back and forth, different layers. As you can see, I've already added some clouds to it. I just wanted to add extra dimension to it by adding some highlights. So I turn off the darker clouds, kind of go back and forth, darken some areas, lighten some areas, add a little bit more. So there's two layers of two different cloud sets overlapping each other here. And see, you can manipulate and see where things go. I'm really digging this digital works. I think it gives the user, the artist, the ability to manipulate and really envision what you have in mind and put it on paper. As I've mentioned before, when I'm doing my spray paintings, I don't really think about it. I know where I kind of want to go, and as the painting starts taking shape, I always say the painting paints itself. Well, with the digital, it still kind of does, but you have more control, right? I mean, you could always say, I don't like that, and rather than trying to fix it or work around it, you can just literally delete that layer and go back. Here I'm adding some more highlights to the rocks. One thing that I've really enjoyed doing with the digital work is adding a layer of adding like really soft light. It almost looks like the light is hitting certain aspects of it, and it gives a really soft glow, kind of bouncing off. I believe a very, one of my favorite artists out there, Thomas Kincaid, used to do this a lot with his paintings. And this kind of gives me the ability to emulate that technique. The brush that I'm using is the same brush that I used for the clouds. So very versatile. It's kind of like the water tinting technique. I'm just adding a soft layer of color on top of the dark aspects of the water, and then changing how the contrast should look, and then the opacity. So if you really want it to be there on their face, you just make it really solid. Here, and this was a little tricky, I'm adding sparkles to the water, and I didn't want to give it the effect that I usually go for on my paintings. I really like sci-fi paintings because, I mean, you can go outside and take a realistic picture. Realism is around us all the time, but sci-fi is not all the time. There I am again, messing with the sensitivity of my brush. It keeps coming out really thick. I swear, I was losing my mind, guys. I couldn't figure it out. It was just a button. You just click a little button and it goes back to being pressure sensitive. But the tricky part that I was talking about is right here on this part of the water. I wanted to add some sparkles. I wanted to make the illusion that there's quite a bit of light hitting this area, and that's why the water kind of changes color here. But I didn't want to give it the too mystical. I still want to add keep some of that realism. So it was a little tricky, but I think ultimately we pulled it off. I added some extra glare to the sun, so it has that nice, vibrant, in-your-face look. Otherwise, it would have looked like just like a solid round dot. There's an image out there of one of the first portions of me experimenting with this painting, trying to finish it up, and it's just a solid sun. So it didn't have the burst. Oh, here's another cool little thing. So I'm right-handed, guys. Well, for the most part, I'm right-handed. And sometimes it's easier to just turn the painting around, right? That's what we did here. The tablet gives you the ability to just click a button and you can rotate it however you need it to rotate it. So I'm adding some sunbursts here. And you see how I'm manipulating the density of it? Now, like I said, this whole process in this video probably, I think in the long run, it would have been 6 to maybe 8 hours in total. But video magic, right? We compressed it and condensed it to just 20 plus minutes, which is what a normal video of spray painting would take. Another thing okay, so here we finally figured out how the pressure sensitivity should work on the pen, and so I was able to create the birds. And then I just duplicated the same layer and kind of manipulated it, copied it over, and created a whole flock of them. And you can also create another layer and then just kind of make it smaller, so you don't have to draw all the small lines. It's one of the cheats that you can do. See that? I didn't like that one, so just completely redrew it. Man, I was completely glad I was able to get this pressure sensitivity working, because it was driving me insane. Now here we turned off the landscape, and as you can see, without the landscape it's just nothing but solid colors in the background, so you can manipulate the sky and add different things to it. Here I'm flipping those birds, and that's another cool thing, right? You can flip vertically. And so we were able to add, I drew them all in one way. They didn't like it, kind of flipped it the other way. Here I'm going through and just adding, and you can barely see it here, but there is actually a layer of birds in the background. Now, having fixed my touch sensitivity on my pen, I'm able to create the grass strands, right? So here I'm adding them. And what you want to do in this case is you add a dark color, in this case black, and then you'll add layers later to create different colors. Now, you guys remember this? You've seen me do this a lot in my spray paintings, and that is bringing it home, adding a piece of land closer to the viewer. Here I'm just adding some grass strands and little plant life, adding some details, making it look a little more realistic. Sometimes turning off the layers in the background. In this case, since we have this nice purple background, the black really stands out so you can really see what's going on. Here I'm adding a light layer. This is like a orangey yellow layer, and then I tone it down a little bit so it's not bright in your face, and it kind of blends into the background of it. Then I go back and add some more highlights, so it really adds dimension to this layer, to this contrast of plant life. Here I'm just adding some black into the water, and then I'll blend it out. I won't make it as dark to it, but it'll give it a little bit of a shadow. See that? Then with a little bit of white, we once again redefine where the shore and the water meet. So as you can tell, and as you can see, it takes a lot of different layers to create something this realistic. It's all digitally done, but it's got that touch of realism. Here I'm just manipulating the terrain, kind of flipping it, seeing if it looks better, maybe twist it a little bit more. Now I'm gonna select a brush tool that looks like grass, add some dark tones and then some highlights on top of that. And this is where the fun begins. Now I'm gonna try and match the rocks that I did earlier, right? And I'm talking like weeks earlier. So I was like, oh man, I hope I remember exactly the color scheme and everything, because it's always a little bit hard to go back and try and match what you did before. This was one of those cases. So I used the same colors, and you can do that by selecting this. It's like a little tool, a tool that helps you grab certain colors from your painting. So you just select those colors and go through and start using your dark tones, your middle tones, and then your highlights. And as you can see here, I'm manipulating the density of the colors too. I'm just gonna copy them over, add some more colors, more layers to it, and see if it begins to take shape as to how I created that background. So you do a lot of copy, guys. It helps. So copied the terrain, added the grass on top of that. Here I'm experimenting to see if I want some rocks to overlap the grass that we just added. I don't think we end up keeping it there. I think eventually I remove it. But anyways, as you can see, it can be fun. Believe me. Well, it's like painting with oils, right? If you guys have ever painted with oils, it takes months, especially if you're waiting for the layers to dry. But as you're doing it, I know to somebody that's never painted before, you're like, are you insane? I'm gonna sit there for months. Well, trust me, guys, once you get better at it and you start to see your creation come to life and really flourish, it doesn't feel like months. Now, who am I kidding? It feels like months, but it's just funner. Alright, so yeah, my wife, right, she gets to see me do all these things, and I'm painting, and she'll be like, are you done with that painting? Oh no, I'm just barely getting to, the sky now. It's been a month, are you kidding? Yeah, it takes that long. But as you're doing it, it's also a learning experience, right? Because as you're doing it, you're also learning how to create certain textures, certain highlights. And sometimes you're like, oh, I think I just learned something new. Let me start this whole sky thing all over again. So it's a trial and error. It's experimentation, to be honest with you. And I find that to always be fun. Here I'm going through the layers. I'm trying to see what layer I'm looking for something. Trust me, I'm looking for a certain layer. And you don't want to add certain colors on other layers, because if you decide to remove that previous layer, you remove the layer that you just spent hours on. Trust me, it's happened to me. It's not all bad, guys. I'm trying to portray the learning curve that you'll experience if you've been one of my watchers or followers for, God, I've been doing this for 20 plus years. If you're one of those and you've seen me paint spray paints, this is the things that you've got to look for or watch for if you're wanting to jump over to the digital world. So it is fun though. I'm not saying it isn't. It's just one of our spray paintings used to take, I don't know, maybe an hour, to get something done. To me, it was at a point where it was 15 minutes, 30 minutes for 16 by 20. Now you're looking at months. But anyways, this is our finished piece. I hope you guys have enjoyed today's, what is it? It's not a tutorial. It's a introduction to the art of digital sketching. So if you guys want to see me start a painting from start to end, it may not be as complex as the one that we are watching here, but it'll definitely introduce you to the beginner level steps. Let me know if you guys would be interested in watching something like that. Until then, all right, crew, keep those cans shaking. We'll see you guys later. Bye.